Hello and welcome to another video by CloudVersity. My name is Stefan and I want to talk about K3S today. So K3S is a lightweight Kubernetes distribution which you can use for different purposes. Speaking for myself, I use K3S as a demo or playground environment at home, but we also use K3S at work. And I just want to share some knowledge about K3S because it's just a great product developed by Rancher. In this video, I will show how you can deploy a Kubernetes cluster based on K3S by yourself. All you need is a Linux machine or maybe 2 Linux machines, so you can follow along because we will deploy on one Linux machine a master node and on the other one a worker node. If this sounds interesting to you, make sure that you hit the like and subscribe button down below and that you follow me on social media. And I will roll the intro, and after the intro, we will dive right into the topic. So see you in a second. Welcome back. Before we get our hands dirty on executing some kube control commands and spinning up clusters and stuff like this, we should take a look at the theory first, just for a couple of minutes. So this is the website from K3S. It's just k3s.io. And they promise that you can spin up a cluster within 30 seconds if you execute this command. If you click on docs in the top right corner here, you will be brought to to the documentation page of K3S. And it tells you that the binary is less than 100 megs, which is really small. And it's great for devices like edge devices and IoT devices and for development purposes. So you can even run K3S on your Raspberry Pi or Pis if you have multiple of them. And as I already said in the intro, we are using K3S for development environments at work. So this works as well. And what else is written down here? What is interesting? Yeah, the name. The name is actually interesting. So probably you already know that Kubernetes, the shortcut for Kubernetes is K8S. So it's just K and S, and between are 8 letters. So it's K8S. So why K3S now? Because K3S is half the size of the Kubernetes binary. So it's like only 5 letters long, and then K and S, now just 5 letters in between, 3 letters in between now. So it's K3S. Actually, a pretty funny idea of naming products. And we can have a look at the architecture as well. So you can spin up a single server setup with the embedded database, which then will be SQLite. Or you can have a high availability setup with multiple master nodes, multiple worker nodes, which are called agent nodes. And what else do we have? Yeah, and we have additional deployment possibilities. But on the main page is also a nice picture or a nice image of how it actually works in detail. So it spawns a process. And as you can see on the left side, it spawns a process with a SQLite DB. Then there's the API server, the scheduler, the controller manager, and the proxy. So it's pretty similar to what K8S or Kubernetes has per default. And then we have the worker node. And on the worker node, there's the kubelet edition. There's a kubelet. And here, which is really great, is that we have containerd installed if we install the binary. So that's actually great because you don't need to have Docker pre-installed or something. So the binary will include kube control and it will include containerd, and then you can just spin up pods. So that's pretty much it. And I would say let's get our hands dirty, and we will do now the practical stuff after we took a look at the theory first for a couple of minutes. What I did in advance of this video, I went to Linode and I created 2 little nanodes. So the nanodes is just because they are really small. It's just 1 gig of memory and 1 CPU. Both of them have a public IP address, and yeah, we can connect to them. So we save some minutes setting those up. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by Linode, so it's just a really simple cloud provider everyone can use. It's cheap, it's easy, great. We don't need more for those tutorials. Yeah, okay. So I will bring this to the left side. Okay, so I'm connected here to the master node, and the second tab is the worker node. And what we need to execute to get everything running is actually in one of my repositories. I wrote it down. I will post a link in the description down below. You can just check this repo out, or I mean, it's not a real repository, it's just README and the manifest. So take a look if you want to replicate what I'm showing here in this video. So to install the master, we will throw this into the command line. So it's a little bit longer command than what we actually saw here at the beginning in this one, because you can extend your command with properties or with additional commands, and you can find them on the Rancher documentation page under installation options, and then the server configurations or the agent configuration page. Then you will have all those informations here. So you can set, for example, where you want to write your kubeconfig to, which permissions the kubeconfig should have. You can provide the node name, etc., etc. And you can even use Docker if you want to, but as I said, it will run on containerd by default. And because Docker is dropped by Kubernetes since version 1.20 or 1.21, I'm not sure, I think 1.20, it's good that we run on containerd. So typically, here's a no deploy traffic. Typically, K3S comes with an ingress controller, which is traffic, but we will actually use Nginx in a minute. So let's hit enter and hack the time. So let's see, I guess it's like 15 seconds now. And we are done. So our Kubernetes is probably running. We can check this with kubecontrol, get nodes. Let's see. And there we are. It's not ready yet, so the master's just starting up, but we have it here. And kubecontrol was not installed before, so I can show you. If I go to the second node and run kubecontrol, the command is not there. So kubecontrol is within the binary we just installed. Okay, so for the next step, we need to have a valid token, which we need to give our worker node so he can attach to our cluster. So if you want to be added to the cluster, he needs to provide a token. And we will find this token here under var lib rancher K3S server node token. And we just cat this token here to the console. So this is our token. We need to have this ready. And then what we need to do is we go to our second node, our worker node, and then we have this command here. As you can see, before, I will make this here a little bit bigger. Before, I passed the additional commands like this, so with the -- write kubeconfig, for example, but you can also do it like this. So you can pass K3S node name as an environment variable. So it's on you, and it's also listed in the documentation of the K3S page. So whatever you prefer, you can use what you prefer. Okay, so what do we need to insert here is the IP address. And per default, it is then connecting on port 6443. So make sure that the port is open. On Linode, it's open by default, but if you deploy it somewhere else, you need to make sure that this port is open. So we need our master IP address, which is this one. I will paste it in here. And we need token. So we have it here. Grab the token, copy, paste, and then we hit enter. And if we are lucky, this will add a worker node to our Kubernetes cluster. This was quite fast. This only took like 5 seconds now. Now we need to wait a little bit and get nodes. Let's see if there's a node joining. And there we are. So it's not ready yet, but our worker node is already there. So what we need to do next is, because we want to export, or not export, we want to make our web application public, we need something which is called an ingress controller. And as I said before, we will use ingress Nginx for this. So there's a project. I will link this also down in the video description. It's like it's an open source project here, and you can just look at the documentation of this one and how it works, stuff like this. And of course, we can deploy this. So because I resized the page, I can't find the deployment option anymore. So it's here at the top. And you have different deployment options. You can go with Docker for Docker Desktop, for Minikube, for AWS, for Azure. Doesn't matter. For everything, it's listed here. And typically, I would install it through Helm. But because this is just a simple tutorial, I will just go with a plain kube apply command. This is also listed here. So kube control apply, and here's the YAML file. You can take a look at the YAML file if you want in advance before you execute it. I will paste it in here on the master node, hit enter, and this will create all the necessary resources. So some services, some role bindings, some cluster roles, config map, and of course the deployment itself. This will take maybe a second or a minute to propagate. And yeah, while this is running, I want to show you something or how you could actually change the settings of your Kubernetes cluster right now. So with the command where we install K3S, you can run K3S and then you have some options. You can uninstall the cluster, you can make snapshots, stuff like this. But because it's actually a service which is running on your host or on your Linux machine, you can go to this path. Yeah, you can go to this path and you will see that the command of starting your service with which options the service actually started is listed here. So you can extend it afterwards. You just install it over the installation which you have done before. So there are multiple options. And if you change the configuration here, you need to restart the service, which is system control restart K3S. So it's pretty easy to maintain here. Okay, so let's check if, oops. ingress Nginx is running. So our namespace, it's there. So let's check if everything in the namespace is running. Yes, it is. So the ingress controller is running, and it probably has a service, and the service has two external IP addresses, which is one is the master node and one is the worker node. Typically, you will have a load balancer from some cloud provider here. For example, if you spawn a EKS cluster in AWS and you create a load balancer service, then this will create Elastic Load Balancer in AWS with a public IP address, but in Linode it works a little bit different if you just use the Linodes, so not the Kubernetes service from Linode. So, okay, this is just the public IP. It's the same IP we have here for our node. So we can actually go ahead and now apply the manifest. I can show it here. What is actually inside? So we will deploy one of the basic CloudVersity official images. So this is on Docker Hub. You can use it on your, if you like, you can use it. This will listen on port 3000. We need obviously a service in Kubernetes which will route traffic to this deployment. So the service is listening on port 80 and will forward traffic to port 3000. And then we need an ingress. I have actually two ingress resources here. One listens just on the path, the root path. So if we paste in the IP address, we should be brought to our deployment. But we can also use paths in our ingress resources. But to use paths, we actually need to have a DNS entry. We don't have a DNS right now. We just have a single plain IP address. And to make a DNS entry out of it, we can just add nip.io or xip.io or traffic.io. So there are multiple providers. They are just redirecting the traffic or resolving the traffic back to the IP address. But from the perspective of the ingress controller, it's a DNS entry. So we will deploy both. So I can show you that routing for root and routing for /CloudVersity will work. So let's create the YAML file first. Just copy paste, manifest YAML, paste it in here. It's bigger, and then we just apply it. So this will create our container. Let's see. It's already running. Okay. So we should be able to go to this IP address. And there we go. So this worked. We have our app deployed and it's publicly reachable. This is just HTTPS, but what is great is that we have, because we use the ingress Nginx controller, there's a default certificate for HTTPS traffic, so for secure connection, pre-installed. But of course, this certificate is not trusted because it's self-signed, and the domain for which it was created is probably not this IP address. So we will get a warning. That's absolutely normal, and we still have a HTTPS connection. But we can't use any paths here because, as I said, it's just an IP address. And we deployed the second ingress resource, so we can do nip.io behind it. We should see nothing actually, so not found, because this guy is watching or listening for the path CloudVersity. So let's check CloudVersity, also not existent. Okay, that's weird. Okay, it's with dash. Okay, cloud minus versity. And here we go. So we can use paths as well. There's probably some misconfiguration. That's why we don't see the image, but you get the point, I guess. If the content of this video was interesting for you, then please consider to click on subscribe and like and all the buttons down there, and you will be provided with a lot more tutorials in the upcoming future. If there are any additional questions or some tutorials you want to have in the future, just let me know, post it in the comments down below. And everything I mentioned in this video will also be in the video description with a link also to the Git repository with all the commands. See you soon!